Good morning, and welcome to a special event celebrating the past, present, and future of the Heritage Center here in Oak Ridge. My name's Courtney Piper, your host and moderator. Today, we'll talk about the closure plan at the Heritage Center, what it is, what it means, and how it's transforming the landscape of the historic East Tennessee Technology Park and former Manhattan project site. We'll have a panel discussion with three guests integral to the project site and its future. But first, we'd like to share reflections from the Department of Energy, UCOR leadership, and our great partners as we together have transformed, enhanced, and protected the Heritage Center site.
Our mission at the East Tennessee Technology Park involves removing all of the old contaminated structures that were left behind from the former uranium enrichment complex, and also addressing any environmental impacts from those previous operations, including restoring the land. We have a multifaceted approach at the East Tennessee Technology Park, where we're not only cleaning the land, but we're also giving it back to the community to reuse. And those reuse objectives include economic development of the region to support that, to support conservation and recreation at the site, and also to support historic preservation. Our progress directly translates into new opportunities for the city and for the region. We have made tremendous progress at the East Tennessee Technology Park, and our employees have made history in the process. We became the first site in the world to remove an entire former uranium enrichment complex, and we completed, by doing that, DOE's largest cleanup project to date. This accomplishment involved decades of work in very challenging conditions to remove more than 500 deteriorated and contaminated structures that had a footprint that could cover the area of 225 football fields. Today, because of the work that we've done, the site is completely different. These massive deteriorated buildings have been cleared away to make wide open fields that are ready for redevelopment. There are multiple small businesses that are already at the site, with bigger companies that have recently announced plans to build there. Our progress at the East Tennessee Technology Park greatly benefits the community and the region in general. We have removed risks and have transformed a liability into an asset for the community and for the region.
With the completion of all the buildings, which we know to be Vision 2020, and that celebration, that then took us to the next step, which was completing remediation of the critical soils areas. They're called exposure units. And then as those are completed, that moves parcels into the transfer process, and that land gets transferred to one of its three end states. The end state vision of the Heritage Center is really threefold. Right at the center of it is turning Heritage Center into a large private sector industrial park. The second end state is, again, establishing the 409th National Park of our country, which is the Manhattan Project National Park. And then thirdly is the conservation, environmental protection aspect end state. And so each of these end states is not only the DOE's vision, but really the vision of the entire community, and the partnership is then it becomes the center of this economic and community development opportunities that exist. The private sector industrial park, there's actually no parcels available right now. They've all been marketed appropriately and bought by a series of different companies with a focus in next generation nuclear, actually. The second end state being the national park piece, it's essentially being done in three phases. We're done with the first phase being the History Center. We've talked about that before. And now we are reaching the 90% design stage and completion of the interpretive center and sort of an education center that also has the platform overlook across the national park, and then the third phase will be this interpreted pathway that goes around the original footprint of K25 with a series of kiosks that people can go and have an experience as they go along. That's progressing very well. And then lastly is the conservation area. And we really have pretty much put a bow around that. We just recently facilitated a signing agreement with an agreement in principle with the Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency, and they're now taking over responsibility for those 3,500 acres. That's the closure plan, right? The closure plan culminates with Go Green, completing the handoff of, roughly 5,500 plus acres to the citizens of Tennessee for economic prosperity, economic development, and meeting the moral and ethical obligation we all have to clean up the Manhattan Project and Cold War era sites. And I think Heritage Center is going to be a showcase across the nation for that, because it's going to have come complete circle.
During my time in Congress, I've been privileged to witness the extraordinary changes at the East Tennessee Technology Park in Oak Ridge. The progress made by DOE and UCOR is a shining example of what can be accomplished when we work together with the right plans, resources, and people. I want to personally thank everyone who has made this possible, especially the thousands of laborers who faced every sort of industrial hazard imaginable. Congratulations to the entire team for achieving such a resounding success.
I've watched the East Tennessee Technology Park go from one of the most contaminated sites in the United States to a burgeoning industrial park and conservation area. The Department of Energy has not only met its moral and legal obligation to clean up the site, but also worked to create a tremendous future economic opportunity for the citizens of East Tennessee.
EPA is pleased to be a part of the partnership with the Department of Energy and the state of Tennessee as we work towards the environmental restoration of the East Tennessee Technology Park on the Oak Ridge Reservation. The cleanup team has more work to do in the months and years ahead to restore groundwater quality and address other environmental challenges, and we are confident that this work will be done successfully to support the economic and redevelopment vision of the people of Oak Ridge.
I appreciate this opportunity to recognize this remarkable cleanup of the former Oak Ridge gaseous diffusion plant. I applaud the exceptional skill, dedication, and teamwork from a host of partners that has driven the transformation of the East Tennessee Technology Park. And there was a terrific partnership between DOE, UCOR, EPA, and TDEC that enabled the scoping, scheduling, and implementation. This partnership completed demolition and waste management ahead of schedule and under budget. The resulting work saved millions for taxpayers and created tremendous development opportunities for the community.
So my ties to economic development in Oak Ridge, and you look at the continuing federal mission that takes place here in Oak Ridge, and the fact that we're looking at some property for economic development purposes that enhances the quality of life for Oak Ridge and all of East Tennessee. But you have to have that balance. And so I think this partnership with TWRA, where we can take a scientific approach to managing the wildlife resources and the fisheries in that part of the community, really add balance to the whole mission.
Today marks the next step in transforming ETTP into the multi-use industrial park that it is intended to be, in which our country and our community deserve. Continuing our partnerships among local, state, federal government, business, and labor, we can ensure that environmental stewardship and reindustrialization become a reality, and that future generations will benefit from our collective efforts. Thank you.
The landscape has changed dramatically over the last 10 years, and I want to say thanks to the Department of Energy, UCOR, and they had some outstanding skilled workers that helped, bring this site now to another industrial site. 40 years of operation, almost 40 years of it just being idle, and now we're here in 2022 are looking for a bright future.
You've heard from several people already about the vision of ETTP and how it's coming to fruition. It didn't just happen, of course. It took a lot of planning, a lot of execution, and a lot of partnerships. And what I want to talk about today is some of the planning that went into that, specifically a closure plan, in-state enclosure plan that we developed. Most people just call it a closure plan. But it was a detailed look at where are we, what's left to be completely finished, and how we're going to get there. We had to do it in a way that really accounted for every acre of the site. Because we do have an integrated in-state, and you clean up a little differently for an historic park than you do for an industrial park as you do for a place that's going to have a walkway or a greenway through it. And so we had to start doing that planning and plan for every square foot, we say sometimes. One of the ways we were able to do that was we broke the site down into 12 geographic areas and looked at each area, how it would be used, how it's already being used, and what was necessary to get there. We developed punch lists for those. So it's very clear what's needed. And developing that list was based on how the land was going to be used and who was going to be occupying it. So where we're at is all the buildings are down basically. We've got a few small structures that are still left that we're using for our final cleanup work. We only have a few exposure units left to complete, and those will be done in 2023. Groundwater and surface water RAWs, or records of decisions, are being worked, and we expect all those decisions to be done by 2025. We also have a lot of infrastructure work. We've already transferred a lot of the electrical lines, the water, the sewer to the city of Oak Ridge. This is the infrastructure that will be needed to operate the industrial park. Okay, so this is a graphic of what the site's going to look like when we're completely done. The purple indicates all the areas that will be in the industrial park. At the center of the site, it's the 409th National Park, the Manhattan National Park on the K-25 site. Of course, another major feature of the site is the airport that's being planned. This is the runway, parallels Highway 58. This light green is the green space that will be integrated throughout the site. This is property that will be transferred to TWRA, but the idea here is it'll be a connector for all the green space. We've got 3,000 acres for the Black Oak Ridge Conservation Easement up here to the site and extending further to the east. And just trying to have an integrated in-state that makes sense, that draws people in not just to work, but to recreate and enjoy the beauty of East Tennessee and all this site has to offer. As far as transfer, that's really our end goal. And so, we get the buildings down, we clean up the soil, and then we transfer the property. The Crowett becomes the owner, and then Crowett markets the property to private businesses. So far, we've transferred about 800 acres at the site, another 500 acres at Horizon Center for 1,300 acres total. We expect to transfer 500 more acres this year. 100 that's for the airport, and then there will be another 150 acres transferred to the airport in about a year and a half. Partnerships are key in all of this. You can't do it alone. Partnerships are key in the planning development, but they're key in execution. Our partnerships with EPA and TDEC are instrumental in everything we do. First of all, they approve the cleanup documents our environmental group does to make sure that we've met the cleanup goals for the site. But then when we transfer, we have regulatory documents. It's kind of a second step to make sure it's safe for reuse. Our partnership with Crowett obviously has to be key. They are the main in-state owner here. And so we work with them to determine what land's most needed by them. Another key partner is the city of Oak Ridge. We work with them on pretty much a daily basis. They're taking on the infrastructure I already mentioned about. There's some property we'll be transferring to them. We have the airport project, the General Aviation Airport. They're doing their NEPA, their environmental assessment right now. They're doing their preliminary engineering. They plan to break ground in August of 2023. And all of this, I think one of the keys you'll hear through all this is not just partnerships, but momentum. I think people are excited about what's going on. We talked theoretically about reuse of the site, but now we have an agreement in principle with TWRA, and we know they're really going to start making natural asset enhancements and increase public use of the site. We've got Crowett having a higher demand for the property than they've ever had. We've got the airport project that's, they've got a schedule to break ground and start constructing their airport. We've got the History Center's open, and now we have a plan for building the viewing platform, and we know that's going to happen. And all this momentum creates additional momentum, and so we're just going to keep working hard, keep talking to all our stakeholders, and keep this moving forward.
Thank you. I'm now joined by three integral members of the team responsible for the progress you just witnessed. First, David Adler, the Director, Quality and Mission Support Division for the Department of Energy, Oak Ridge Office of Environmental Management. Lawrence Young, the former President of Community Reuse Organization of East Tennessee, and Ashley Saunders, the End State and Federal Land Reuse Manager with UCOR. Thank you all for being here, and a reminder to our audience to use the Q&A function to ask questions at any time during the program. All right, our first question goes to Lawrence. Lawrence, what are you most excited about coming to realization at ETTP?
Well, it's an interesting time. This process has always been interesting. I guess what I'm most excited about, I use a different word, and that is amazed. I'm quite frankly amazed that we are where we are currently. As I look back now many decades ago to 1995 and think about what the site was. And for those who don't remember it or maybe hadn't been exposed to it, this is a monumental endeavor. In 1995, that site had more than 1,000 buildings that were single purpose, and there was no longer a purpose for those. The Berlin Wall had come down. There wasn't really the stomach to clean up the site. And it was a decaying, dilapidated, and quite frankly, dangerous site that needed to be cleaned up. But we were talking about billions of dollars. And in fact, at that point, it was unknown what it would take to clean the site up. So one of the things that occurred was that, we recognized that there needed to be something different than just simply cleaning the site up, because that probably wasn't going to be possible. Just money in, product out. So reindustrialization was born, recognizing that you would have an opportunity to be able to reuse some of the facilities and the land. And in effect, that gave a point in time in the future that was the end state. And I think that was key and integral to the process that we see. But don't underestimate, and I know anybody involved with it doesn't, but for those uninitiated, you simply can't underestimate what effort went into this. I would offer to you that back then, and in fact, even as long ago as maybe the early 2000s, this was an impossible endeavor. And, the people that worked on this turned the impossible into the possible. And we're now at a point where we have, industrial property that's clean and safe and can be marketed and redeveloped into a new industrial park. The second part of my answer is, quite frankly, that I'm really excited about the opportunities that now are presented. We've worked hand in hand, and perhaps that was the most audacious thing that we did, was that we worked side by side with the contractor, UCOR, and DOE, and were leasing buildings to private sector companies, and in fact, building buildings right next to a D&D activity. And anybody that thinks that wasn't hard simply has no idea. That was really hard. But where we are now is we have an opportunity that, companies that come in and look at the site no longer have to have the superhuman vision that we did to see into the future and know that it was going to be a good thing. They can now look and say, oh, wow, this is really a nice site. And I think that that's the really exciting part, because you have an opportunity now to transition what is a really, really good site. I mean, the reason K25 was there was it was a good site for industrial development. It's now a good site for industrial development again. So, I think I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to thank every one of the people that worked directly and those that worked even indirectly on this activity, because it took thousands and thousands of dedicated people and frankly decades to get where we are. And I'm just glad I lived long enough to see it.
Thank you, Lawrence. Let's talk about another partnership, a new agreement between TWRA and DOE. And Dave, this question is for you. How will this agreement change the site? What will it do for the community, and when can we expect to see these changes?
Well, the recent agreement with TWRA will greatly benefit the public's access to the site and the public's ability to utilize the site and enjoy natural features at the site. DOE's challenge with the ETTP site has been that there are areas that are suitable for economic development, and then other areas which, by virtue of their topography or wetlands or other natural features, really aren't that feasible for economic development. So we needed to find a partner who can help us manage that. And we have now found such a partner. And we will be, over the next few years, transferring parcels of land, large chunks, hundreds of acres, in one case, thousands of acres at a time, to the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency. I think from the public's perspective, much of this area is already in a greenway status. That won't change, but we hope that the TWRA takes advantage of opportunities to modify habitats as necessary to ensure the continuance or introduction of threatened or challenged species on the site. So basically, the TWRA is the state's preeminent natural resource management agency. And these lands are appropriately managed by such an agency. So we look forward to working with them very, very much.
And Dave, we have a specific question about one of those natural features. Poplar Creek meanders about 5 miles through the Heritage Center, the potential for a pretty blue way. Is the cleanup along the shorelines of Poplar Creek part of this final step?
Yes, measures along the creek will be part of these final steps, including the development of some canoe access ways. And I expect that over the next couple of years, the vision that others have had to create a blue way through the site will be realized.
Great. All right, our next question goes to Ashley. Ashley, tell us what happens behind the scenes. What does it take to accomplish this kind of work? And what are some of the jobs that your staff performs?
Thanks, Courtney. As you can imagine, there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into the cleanup of the site. As Lawrence mentioned, there's been, decades worth of cleanup to get the buildings down, but, I just want to make sure everyone is aware of the remaining cleanup and the work that we do every day. So UCOR has about 200 individuals dedicated to the cleanup of the Heritage Center. So that means the planning and execution of the remaining soil remediations, which we are actively working and we're nearing completion of, and we'll be working through the remainder of this year in 23 to complete. But also we have a team that's dedicated to the transfers and the reindustrialization. So, we stay really closely tied with our partners, with Lawrence and Croat, of course, with DOE and the community, the city of Oak Ridge, to understand their needs and try to anticipate those needs as things come up, because that process can take up to about 2 years. And so, we've learned a lot about working together over the past, several years and decades on this process. So we want to optimize it the best that we can. I would also say that, the remaining work and decisions at the site involve regulatory approval. So that tri-party agreement between DOE, the state, and EPA is critical to keeping work moving out at the site. So, we try to have transparent and open communication and support of those decisions, and to keep things moving along so we can produce the end states that we're all committed to.
Great. And Ashley, what do you think people would find most interesting about the closure plan?
I think people would really be impressed with all the success and progress that we've made. I mean, of course, it's a beautiful East Tennessee day here today. I'm glad we didn't have site tours planned, but certainly anybody who visits the site would see how much progress has been made. But you heard Kevin talk a lot about it in the video. I think there's a plan for every acre, plan for every square foot. As we say, we've divided the plan and the site into these geographical areas to really ensure that the best and highest use of each area is being achieved and driven through our decision making and the in-state users that we partner with. And so I think people would be surprised to know how detailed that plan is. So I look forward to folks having the opportunity to take a look at that plan, and we'll have a link to a summary plan on our website that I hope everybody who's participating here will take a look at. But there's also work left to be done. We have some remaining regulatory decisions left to be made. We have remaining groundwater records of decision, as well as a remaining media record of decision. And so, we're not done. And we had a question about the river line cleanup. There are several things related to closure activities and finding, ensuring that we're meeting the needs of the end user where appropriate. So, there's definitely work left to be done.
Okay. And Lawrence, question back to you. There has been significant interest in ETTP from new companies. So why Oak Ridge?
Well, that's a good question.
Now, remember, we're only going until 10:30. We could go on and on about this, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'll try and be succinct. Oak Ridge, and this, and maybe some of you, the rest of your audience knows that before CROAT, I actually served as Economic Development Director for Oak Ridge and Industrial Recruiter for Oak Ridge. And I found that Oak Ridge is a really good place to locate, centrally located. There used to be a dearth of industrial properties, but with the development of Horizon Center and Heritage Center and other properties, that was solved. But I think there was something that was always problematic with Oak Ridge, and that was the issue of legacy. And one could present the scientific facts to a client, and they might intuitively say, yeah, that's probably true. But if you looked around Oak Ridge and you looked at what I had alluded to earlier, the K25 site, looking like a post-apocalyptic movie set, and you also, frankly, looked at the laboratory, you looked at Y12. It reinforced the notion that maybe Oak Ridge's day had passed, that it was a bit of a decay. But then over time, we've already been talking about what we've done at the K25 site, but you look at what was done at the laboratory, beginning with the spallation neutron source and the revamping of the laboratory into what looked like a state-of-the-art facility that reinforced the state-of-the-art work that was being done there. And the recent activities at Y12, and frankly, even the activities in the city of Oak Ridge, with the beginning of, I think, with the redevelopment of the high school. And then, the dead mall turning into a revitalized central business district. I think that kind of reinforced what we had been telling our clients, that this is a really good location. And I think now it's coming to fruition. You now have a site with Heritage Center that looks every bit as important and conducive to the client's development as we say it does. So it's just it's a really, really good time, because I think that the community overall, writ large, and we could have called reindustrialization revitalization. And I think that that's apropos for what has happened with the community. So now I think it is a really interesting place to look at. And in economic development, one always needs a hook. And we always believed that the hook we had was the scientific underpinnings of the community. And with I think the crisis that generally most people agree is evident with global warming, that the nuclear and the revitalization of nuclear power generation is going to be a partial solution to that problem. We always had that capability. And I think we may have had a solution waiting for a problem. And that's what we now have. And frankly, I think that's what is generating quite a bit of activity at the Heritage Center in particular, because we're going to need, we as a world are going to need the next generation of nuclear power. And that's some of the more exciting activities that are happening at Heritage Center. And therein is the hook. So we're very fortunate that timing has worked out. It took decades to get to where we are at Heritage Center, but it took decades to realize that we needed nuclear power. So, I think it's a nice conjunction of those two things.
One of the companies that is locating to the East Tennessee Technology Park is Kairos Power. So with the recent progress on real estate sales like Kairos Power, what areas are left to develop?
Well, there's still a couple, and a couple significant areas. There's the former site of the K27 and 29 building, which is about central to the overall park. And that's an area that is similar to the K33 area where Kairos Power did locate. Now, it's somewhat smaller. It's about 2/3 the size of the 3133. And that should be coming online within the next couple of years. There's also an area of about 25 acres that is where the former Tosca incinerator was located. And that's a beautiful site. And we hope to be able to acquire that within the next few months. And then lastly, there's the old powerhouse site, which is down in the southwestern corner of the site. That's it's a large site. Now, the usable portion of that is somewhere nominally between 50 and 100 acres. So those are the three main areas. And then we have a few small parcels that are scattered around the site that are currently available. But those three that I mentioned, Powerhouse, the Tosca, and lastly 2729, are the three remaining that need to come online. And with the activity that we have, they can't come online too soon.
Very true. Well, Dave, let's talk about plans for historic preservation. This is something that we're all excited about. So tell us more about what comes next as it relates to historic preservation at ETTP.
Sure. As part of our agreement with the state and as part of our obligation under the National Historic Preservation Act, we are implementing a collection of very significant mitigative measures to address the physical history that was lost as the buildings were taken down. Some of them are already in place and there's more to come. We've already created essentially a history center available to the public free of charge on the top floor of the fire station out at Oak Ridge. And it's a really nice, small, but very nice museum that visitors can go to and understand better the human history and the technology that took place, that was developed for the Manhattan Project. And anyone that hasn't seen it yet, you an Oak Ridger or someone just visiting Oak Ridge, I really strongly recommend people stop by. It's very convenient as you enter the city. In addition, we are in pretty much the final design stages of a viewing tower that will be erected just to the south of the original K-25 building site. And from that building, people will be able to get a better sense of the scale, which was enormous, of the gaseous diffusion operations at K-25. It will also present opportunity for additional visits, so exhibits and so forth. Finally, there are a collection of things that are being done out on the grounds themselves. We should, before too long, start seeing roadside exhibits and exhibits dotted about the footprint of the former building that will allow visitors who choose to go for a bike ride or about a 1 mile walk to walk around the building to really dive into what happened at the site, types of technologies that were used, stories of human interest, and so forth. So there's already something to see out there, and I really recommend people go and check it out, but there will be a lot more over the next couple of years.
It really is fantastic, and I can't wait to see more progress on the historic preservation elements at ETTP. So I don't think we can overemphasize the power of partnerships enough. So Dave, talk to us a little bit more about what partnerships enabled the program's success.
Sure. I think each of the presenters today has spoken about the importance of partnership, and I'm going to reemphasize that. It's been all about partnerships. I'd say that one of the earliest and most enabling partnerships was the partnership established about 30 years ago between the Department of Energy and the Community Reuse Organization of East Tennessee. I say an enabling relationship because that fundamentally set up a mechanism for us to transfer facilities and property from the federal government to other entities, be they not-for-profit or private sector, or in some cases TWRA type agencies. We really weren't good at doing that. There are a lot of reasons why the federal government has a on transferring things directly to private entities. And CROET was set up essentially legislatively to meet that need. So I really need to stress the importance of that relationship. It's been in place for 30 years now, and we've been tearing down the site and redeveloping the site at the same time in partnership with CROET. In addition, there are multiple other partnerships. I've already mentioned the partnership with TWRA, so I won't cover that more other than just to say it really checked the box for having a way of managing natural areas. Our partnerships with the city are key because at the end of the day, the hope is that DOE has essentially completely defederalized the site. And there will be some residual activity will always be there for managing a couple of old burial grounds, monitoring groundwater and so forth. But we're working very hard to get all the infrastructure inside, electrical supply, sanitary, potable and sewer supplies, stormwater, roads, all of those things to the maximum extent practicable transferred to the city. And we've been working very closely with the city on that. They've already had a lot of success in that area. So working with our host city is very important. Of course, it's important. The role that EPA and EDEC have played has been key also, because generally, if you're trying to convert an old Cold War site into a public park and industrial park, you would expect people to have some reservations presented by the stigma of the original site submission. And it's probably not good enough just for the Department of Energy to say it's safe now. We need independent agencies to provide an independent assessment of the readiness of the site. Is it, as Lawrence said, safe and ready to go? And the state and EPA have both worked very hard with us on that front. They basically help us design the sampling activities that are needed to prove the site is safe, review all the data, and they ultimately end up issuing formal communications from the governor and from the regional administrator to declare the site ready for its intended transfer purpose. So that's been a very key partnership. I'm sure there's partnerships that I'm not mentioning that I'm forgetting that are important too. I apologize to everybody else, but it really has been all about partnerships. And a lot of people working very tenaciously for a very long time together to pull this off.
Thank you, Dave. And a reminder to our attendees, if you want to ask a question to our panelists, just use that Q&A function. It's at the bottom of your Zoom screen. All right, this next question goes to all of our panelists, but Ashley, we will start with you first. Provide your perspective about progress, momentum, and future plans for Oak Ridge. How are things changing?
So I'm going to piggyback off of something Lawrence said when he talked about the available areas at the site, and just highlight one area where I really think the transformation has been really visible recently, and that's Powerhouse. So, we had a Powerhouse, for those of you who aren't familiar, originally fed the power to the main plant site. It's a little bit west of the core of the site, and there was also some other activities that went on out there. And so we had a remedial action that we completed last year as a result of that. And in the process of us completing that remedial action, we really were able to reveal this incredible piece of land that's right along the Clinch River. It's beautiful. It's ripe for reindustrialization, as Lawrence mentioned. There's usable land at the center of it, but it's also, got a perimeter of some really great opportunity for conservation and natural asset development. So to me, that's just like a representation of what, the work that we're all doing together, how that can transform a piece of land that maybe people hadn't seen a lot of potential for in the past. And now it's got this multi-use potential for the future. And so I think that's just a great example.
Excellent. And Lawrence, we'll go to you next. Provide your perspective about the progress, momentum, and future plans for Oak Ridge and how things are changing.
Well, I've spoken to that a little bit already, but I think that this is a golden time. There's Oak Ridge. I don't think that it's been this great an opportunity since since Oak Ridge was built. Frankly, I think that there's incredible momentum with the sightings of clients, very exciting clients like Kairos that are going to bring a private sector vitality to Oak Ridge that will coordinate and, of course, enhance the already significant vitality that comes from the activities occurring at the laboratory and elsewhere in the complex. I think Ashley had spoken about or Kevin, someone had spoken about the airport. I think that's an exciting opportunity. It's one that will allow for, should it be built, for us to be able to attract a different type of client to Oak Ridge who, may be engaged in the aeronautic field, may also be very useful for companies to be able to ship product. There's one particular company that needs to be able to ship its product very quickly because the half-life of its product. And, even that half hour to McGee-Tyson Airport could be enough to lose, potential market share. So to be able to have that airport right next door to an industrial client is really something quite special.
Great, thanks, Lawrence. And Dave, that question to you too. Provide us your perspective on progress and the future in Oak Ridge.
I'm excited. I think that as the site has transitioned from it being a site where you come out and see buildings, old kind of ratty buildings, to a site where you see a lot of green fields and a couple of tenants starting to pop up, the interest in the site has just grown very dramatically. Of course, we don't discuss publicly business opportunities, but they are beginning to come in, and it's a very, very exciting time for a heritage center. If I could throw in, I thought of one of the partners that I left out on the last call, and I don't want to. I want to revisit it. It's not because I got a text, it's because I actually remembered it. Our cleanup contractors, they've been key to this. They have, for decades, looked at ways to clean up that are consistent with reindustrialization of the site. They've actually used the reindustrialization program in many cases to reduce the cost of cleanup. And it's been, particularly over the past 10 years or so, a very significant focus on the part of our cleanup contractors to make the conversion of the site, not just to a clean site, but to a reuse site priority. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that.
Thanks, Dave. It's been a great partnership. Appreciate you saying so.
Okay, well, David, some of your comments earlier, you mentioned that we could be seeing some canoe access points in the future. We have a person in the comments here that says they are a frequent user of the Powerhouse Trail. So how will the community be able to access the site? What will some of the new features look like? What will the community and the public be able to enjoy?
Sure. I don't want to be dramatic, but literally the people will be able to access the site by land, sea, and air. I mean, if the airport comes in, then that will be a way people can access the site. But there will be a lot of lands that are essentially still held in public trust, surrounding the site and winding through the site. The roads will be public roads, feed the site, at least that's the plan. And those roads will lead you to a network of hiking trails, biking trails, canoe launch areas, et cetera, that will make it very easy for people to enjoy the publicly accessible portions of the site. Now, of course, there will be privately owned portions of the site, and we will want to and need to respect the needs of those private tenants. But there's so much space out there. I really think we can do both these things at once. So I think for the past 30 years, if you drove into the site, you began encountering signs saying, unless you've got a badge and a reason to be here, you don't need to be here. Those signs are coming down, and public access and public opportunities are springing up.
All right, well, we do have a question from our audience that we'll take now. That question, I think, is relevant for all of our panelists. The ETTP transformation is a model for other sites where partnerships have created new economic opportunities at a brownfield site. Can you comment on the added synergy with the possible location of a small modular reactor at the Clinch River site?
I'll take a first cut at that. Given that there's considerable focus on new green energy technologies at the ETTP site and the proximity of I keep calling it the ETTP site. I want to start calling it the Heritage Center site because that is officially its name. The proximity of the Heritage Center site to the TVA site, I believe the governor in his state speech called it the Clinch River nuclear site. So it's being, used to be the rear site, now it's being renamed as basically develop a nuclear park. There's an obvious synergy. The Heritage Center presents an opportunity to provide support activities to those types of industries. Kairos actually has a relationship with TVA on several fronts, and there's just an obvious synergy. We need to work to maintain connectivity, if possible, between the two sites. There's a barge terminal that provides access to both. There's a rail line that potentially could link the two, though we have to try to make everything fit with the airport also. But I think maintaining connectivity between the sites, physical transportation connectivity between the sites will be important also. But there's obviously opportunity. Both sites benefit from the infrastructure that's in place at the site now. Both sites are very close to the interstate, connected by a very high quality road. Both sites have access in one way or another to the barge terminals and the rail terminals. Both sites have lots of power available to them because of forward missions at the site. The proximity, of course, makes that obvious partnership potential also.
Okay, and Lawrence, I saw you nodding your head when I was asking this question. Thoughts?
Well, I think that David is better than I, but there's a synergy between those two sites, and quite frankly, I think it just reinforces the notion that we are rapidly becoming the nexus for new nuclear, and that's really exciting.
Ashley, do you have any thoughts? We've got one more question, unless there are no other questions from our audience. So Ashley, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll echo what our other two panelists have said. I mean, there's certainly a lot of synergy around new nuclear, but I think we're seeing initiatives, you know, coming out of the federal government right now around green energy in general. Certainly, I think there's a multitude of opportunity to lean into those things and to really be kind of at the leading edge of that here in Oak Ridge and Heritage Center and the surrounding areas are great opportunities to implement some of those things. I mean, electrification of vehicle fleets and other, you know, there are just a lot of opportunities related to climate management and climate justice. So I think that we're really excited about how all of those can work together to, as Lawrence said, make us sort of the hub or the nexus of green energy. And with our legacy of nuclear, it just really makes sense for it to be here in Oak Ridge.
Absolutely.
If I could augment that just a little bit. Yeah, the site isn't just about the future of nuclear energy. All energy technologies are welcome. All technologies are welcome. But it's important to understand that Oak Ridge has played a role in a lot of the advanced manufacturing and composite materials development approaches that end up taking the form of lighter weight cars, better windmill blades, more efficient solar panels. All of those types of industries would be a good match for the site. There's already 2 solar fields on the site producing a modest amount of power, but it's a start. So I just want to amplify what she said, that's another area of opportunity.
Thanks, Dave. I really want to take a moment to recognize both Dave and Lawrence for the contributions they've made in their careers to the reindustrialization program. Those of us who joined this effort in the last few years are so fortunate to be following in their footsteps. They have made the program and the transformation of the site what it is today. We would not have been successful without their passion and dedication to this journey. And as they move on in retirement to other phases of their lives, I just want to say from certainly UCOR, but I think I can speak for all of our partners and stakeholders when I say thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Lawrence, and thank you, Dave. Now we'd like to introduce you to 2 of our newest partners.
We have so many exciting things happening at Heritage Center right now. There's the Kairos Power development of a nuclear test reactor on the former K-33 site, and USNC recently acquired a facility on site where they'll be siting their pilot fuel manufacturing operation. We're also working with 2 other companies that are interested in locating at Heritage Center. So there's a lot of interest in redevelopment of the former K-25 site. In addition, we have a general aviation airport that's proposed to be built at Heritage Center. As Croat's new president and CEO, I'm very excited to see these projects continue to develop and be successful.
I think about back in 1984 when the government made the decision to shut down the K-25 site. But when that happened, there were a group of people in Oak Ridge who decided that this was not the end of the story. And so at that time we began thinking about and working on what can we do to make this area a good spot for another company to come and locate here. It's so exciting because we are in the time where all of these dreams are coming true. And we have industries who are excited about locating here in East Tennessee in the East Tennessee Technology Park. And we are just looking forward to all of the bright things to come here in Oak Ridge.
Well, thank you again to our panelists, our attendees for joining us today to help celebrate this historic moment, tremendous accomplishment, and bright future of the Heritage Center in Oak Ridge. Thank you all very much and have a great day.